Welcome to Lesson 9, Part 1. And we are looking at regrouping for subtraction and subtraction across zeros. We're going to be looking at pages 23 and 24. We're going to do page 23 for Part 1 and 24 for Part 2. So here's our lesson. Regrouping for subtraction and subtraction across zeros. Our content objective is 4, 4th grade, NBT, numbers base 10, B4. And this has a star next to it or an asterisk because this is a key one. You have to be able to do this by the end of the year. I can subtract large numbers fluently. Language objective, I can use place value to regroup for subtraction. Social objective, I can work with others to create a model to prove how to regroup. We have 3 vocabulary words. First is minuend. That is the first number in a subtraction. In subtraction, the amount you have. So the minuend is what you have. And then we have the subtrahend. That is the second number in subtraction. That's the amount to be taken away. So the minuend is what you have. The subtrahend is what you're taking away. And those cannot ever switch places. You can't say, oh, never mind, I actually have a 5 instead of a 0 or a 7. This is what you have. You can't switch places with the other number because they're not being grouped together. They're being taken apart. Difference. The result of subtracting one number from the other. So we call it the answer to a subtraction problem. But we're seeing what is left over when we take out what they have in common. So we have some rhymes for regrouping. You've heard me use it in our daily fraction. But just in case, we have more on top. When we have more on the top with subtraction, there is no need to stop. We can subtract. If the numbers are the same, numbers the same, then zeros the game. That means you're going to end up with a 0 for you're taking away the same amount. And then last, more on the floor. Go next door to the larger place. You can't borrow from somebody who has less. You have to borrow from somebody who has more. And regroup. More. Okay, so those are the sayings we're going to use. Regrouping for subtraction. And it's best to do your regrouping before you even subtract. We're not even subtracting in this lesson at all. We're just focused on the regrouping. So here we're going to subtract these numbers. So our minuend, this is what we have, 6,348. And we're going to take away our subtrahend, 2,765. We're going to see what's left over or our difference. So unlike with addition, the only base 10 blocks that would be here would be to represent our minuend, what we have. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 thousands. We have 1, 2, 3 hundreds. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. You can barely see them, but they are there. So if you want to draw a line to represent them. 4 tens and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ones. That is what we have. We're not putting these down because this is what we're going to take out of what we have. So first thing, we have to be able to write it correctly vertically, so 6,348. The top number always goes on the top. Now you may have been told the bigger number does. That is not always true in math. As you get into higher math, that won't be the case. Just remember the minuend, or your first number, is always on top. Then we put our subtrahend. Make sure we line up from the ones. Make sure you're always lining up from the ones. So first you have to be able to write it correctly, where you're lining up your ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. Okay, next, then what we need to do is look at the ones place and think. We have more on top. No need to stop. So we're good. We don't even need to worry about stopping. We can subtract because there's more. There's 1, 2, 3 left over. There were plenty to cross out, and we still have some left over. Now we look at the tens. More on the floor. Go next door. You have to go to the number that has a greater amount. You can't borrow from somebody who has less. So we go next door and regroup 10 more. So we're taking one of the hundreds, we're crossing it out. Now we have 2 hundreds, and we're going to divide this up, and instead of having just the 4 tens, 1, 2, 3, 4 that we had here, we break this 100 up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tens. So now we have a total of 10 plus 4. We have a total of 14 tens. Still the same amount. I just took the 100 and broke it up into its tens. It's like taking a $10 bill and breaking it into $1. You still have the same value, it just took on a different form. So now we have 14 tens and 2 hundreds. Okay. Then we look at our hundreds place. We have more on the floor. Go next door to the higher number. You can't regroup from a lower number. And regroup 10 more. So we're taking one of these thousands and we're going to break it up into 10 hundreds. So there's 3, 6, 9, 10 hundreds. Because it's the same value. It's like taking a $1,000 bill and breaking it up, there is such a thing, into hundreds. You have 10 hundreds then. Well, how many thousands do you have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5,000 left over. And now we have 10 hundreds, 11, 12 hundreds. And that's all we're going to do there. We have more on top, no need to stop. We've got a regrouping. The next step would be to subtract, but we're not even worried about that. We just want to focus on regrouping today. Now we're going to look at regrouping for subtraction across zeros, because this can be a little tricky for some. So here, what we have is 1, 2, 3. Again, I'm sorry it didn't copy darkly. 4, 5, 1,000, 1, 2, 3. 5,003. 5,003, take away 2,639. So when we look at it in our ones place, as it says here, tells us there's more on the floor, go next door, regroup 10 more. But we have no hundreds. But that's not exactly true. We actually have, in here, we have 500 tens. Even though there's 0 tens here, 0 hundreds here, we do have a total of 500 tens in this number. It's all contained inside here. So in here, we have 100 tens. In here, if we break it apart, we have 100 tens. In here, we have 100 tens. In here, we have 100 tens. In here, we have 100 tens. That's what we're looking at, 500 tens that are in there. Now that we've looked at that, if we take away, if I cross that out and I take away just 1 10, well, what's 500? 500, take away 1. We'll count backwards. What number comes right before 500? 499. So this changes to 499. If I take one of those away, I'm left with 1, 2, 3, 4 thousands, and then 9 hundreds. These are the hundreds. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tens. And then we take one of the tens, because we have took that one away, and we're going to add it over to our ones. 10 plus 1, 2, 3 is 13. So we take one of the tens away from here, and we have 13. I don't want to see a 0 crossed out with a number and then a number, a 0 crossed out with a number and a number, because what ends up happening is you forget what to change it to, and you get up with random numbers here. Just look at the number that's here. 500 take away 1 is 499. That 10 gets added to here, we get 13. Now we're ready to subtract because we have more on top, no need to stop. 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 So, but we're not subtracting. We're just looking at the regrouping right now. So we're going to practice again regrouping on all of these. More on the floor. Go next door. Regroup 10 more. I'm going to take a 10 away from 30. I'm left with 20. And I'm going to give that 10 to 6. 10 plus 6 is 16. Numbers the same, zeros a game. More on the floor. Go next door. Regroup 10 more. 7 take away 1 is 6. So that 10 hundreds, I'm going to add to the 100, and 10 plus 1 is 11 hundreds. Our regrouping is done, and we could subtract, but we're only looking at regrouping today. More on the floor. Go next door. Regroup 10 more. 5 tens, take away 1 10 is 4 tens. That 10 plus 2, 10 plus 2 is 12. More on top, no need to stop. More on the floor. Go next door. Regroup 10 more. So 8 take away 1 is 7. So there's 10 hundreds and 1,000. I add that 10 hundreds to 3 hundreds, and I get 13 hundreds. More on the floor, go next door, regroup 10 more, take 1 away from 9, add that 10 to 7, and I get 17. Okay, you want to be trying these by yourself just to make sure. Here we have more on top, no need to stop. More on the floor, go next door, regroup 10 more. That becomes 2. Then 10 plus 5 is 15. More on the floor, go next door, regroup 10 more. 9 take away 1 is 8. Add that 10 to 2 and I get 12. More on top, no need to stop. More on the floor, go next door, regroup 10 more. 4 take away 1 is 3. And that 10 thousandths plus 2,000 is 12,000. So that is regrouping. That's all we're focusing on, so that the next step is to be able to subtract. But if we're not successful with regrouping, then we won't be successful with subtraction. So let's go ahead and do part 2 with our 3-column notes.